The Jayne Mansfield mystery finally solved, and it's shocking. Jayne Mansfield. The name itself conjures images of blonde bombshell glamour, pink extravagance, and a dazzling, albeit controversial, presence that rivaled even Marilyn Monroe. She was a force of nature, a master of publicity, a mother, and one of the most recognizable faces of old Hollywood's golden, yet often dark, era. Her death in 1967 wasn't just a tragic end to a vibrant life. It was an event shrouded in horrifying rumors and chilling details that have persisted for decades. But today, we're going beyond the gossip. We're going to unveil the true, shocking reality of Jayne Mansfield's last moments. Vera Jane Palmer was born on April 19, 1933, in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Her early life wasn't one of privilege. Her father, Herbert Palmer, a lawyer, died of a heart attack when Jayne was only 3 years old, a profound loss that would undoubtedly shape her. Her mother, Vera, remarried several years later, and the family, including a younger brother, eventually moved to Dallas, Texas. Even as a young girl, Jayne was described as bright and ambitious. Stories vary, but many accounts highlight an early desire for fame and recognition. She reportedly had a high IQ and initially considered fields like teaching or even law, perhaps following in her father's footsteps. But the allure of performing and the spotlight proved too strong. At a remarkably young age for the era, just 16, she married Paul Mansfield, her high school sweetheart. Shortly after, she became a mother, giving birth to her first child, Jayne Marie Mansfield, in 1950. This early start to family life might seem at odds with the glamorous image she'd later cultivate, but it underscores a duality in her personality, a woman seeking both the conventional comforts of family and the extraordinary heights of stardom. The marriage was brief, ending officially in divorce just a few years later, but it set the stage for the complex personal life that would intertwine so dramatically with her public persona. Her small-town roots and early experiences provided a stark contrast to the glittering, often ruthless world she was determined to conquer. With a divorce behind her and a child to support, Jayne set her sights firmly on Hollywood. It wasn't an easy path, armed with stunning looks and an undeniable confidence. She first tried her hand at beauty contests, a common stepping stone for aspiring actresses at the time. She won several titles, honing her ability to captivate an audience. Moving to Los Angeles wasn't an immediate fairy tale. She took odd jobs, working at a movie theater selling popcorn, working as a photographer's assistant, anything to be close to the industry and make ends meet. She tirelessly pounded the pavement, going on auditions and screen tests. Early attempts were often met with rejection or small, insignificant roles. She signed a brief contract with Warner Brothers in 1954, but they reportedly struggled to find the right roles for her and dropped her within months. It was a setback, but Jayne Mansfield was not easily deterred. She was shrewd. She understood the power of publicity, even before she had major roles. She cultivated her image. The platinum blonde hair became her trademark, and she wasn't shy about emphasizing her voluptuous figure. She used public appearances, sometimes deliberately provocative, to get her name and face in the papers. While some criticized this approach, it was undeniably effective in getting her noticed in a crowded industry. She studied acting, trying to improve her craft, aware that looks alone wouldn't guarantee lasting success. She was working against the tide in some ways. Hollywood often wanted to pigeonhole her based purely on her appearance. But her ambition was fierce, her determination relentless. She was building something, piece by calculated piece, towards the stardom she craved. The struggle was real, marked by moments of hope and frustrating disappointments, but she was inching closer to the breakthrough that would change everything. The breakthrough arrived not initially on film, but on the stage. In 1955, she landed a role in the Broadway production of Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter? Her performance, playing a caricature of a ditzy blonde sex symbol, was a sensation. It perfectly capitalized on her public image while also showcasing a comedic timing many hadn't expected. This success led to a major contract with 20th Century Fox, the very studio that had made Marilyn Monroe their biggest star. In fact, Fox positioned Jayne as a potential successor or even rival to Monroe, especially as Monroe was having her own complex contract disputes with the studio at the time. The film adaptation of Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter in 1957 solidified her film stardom, but it was her earlier role in the 1956 musical comedy The Girl Can't Help It that truly catapulted her into the stratosphere. The film, a vehicle for early rock and roll stars like Little Richard, featured Jayne prominently, and her performance and undeniable screen presence made her an overnight international sex symbol. She followed this with roles in films like Kiss Them for Me, often playing similar, though sometimes more nuanced, characters. She wasn't always given the strongest material, but she brought a unique energy and magnetism to the screen. Her public persona was meticulously crafted, the exaggerated curves, the signature color pink, her home, cars, and even pets were often pink, and her highly publicized relationship and marriage to Hungarian bodybuilder Mickey Hargitay. Their joint appearances were a paparazzi's dream, culminating in their elaborate pink palace mansion in Beverly Hills, which became a symbol of their ostentatious, glamorous lifestyle. She was a star in demand, performing in Las Vegas, headlining international tours, making television appearances. She was known for being accessible to the press, always ready with a quote or a pose, maintaining the carefully constructed illusion of a woman living her most fabulous life. At her peak in the late 1950s, Jayne Mansfield was one of the most famous women in the world, a vibrant, undeniable icon of a particular brand of Hollywood glamour. While her career glittered, Jayne Mansfield's personal life was a whirlwind of activity, often as public and dramatic as her on-screen roles. Her marriage to Mickey Hargitay was her most famous. They were a power couple of their time, the glamorous actress and the muscular Mr. Universe. Together, they had 3 children, Mickey Jr., Zoltan, and Mariska Hargitay. Their life at the Pink Palace, with its heart-shaped swimming pool, was the stuff of tabloid headlines. However, behind the pink facade, the marriage faced immense pressure, conflicting careers, financial strain, and perhaps fundamental differences. They divorced in 1964. She quickly remarried director Matt Cimber, but that marriage was even shorter and more tumultuous, ending in 1966, though the divorce wasn't final at the time of her death. These marriages, and the subsequent legal battles, particularly over child custody and finances, added layers of stress and instability to her life. Despite her fame, she often struggled financially, partly due to her extravagant lifestyle and perhaps questionable business decisions. The constant need to work, to maintain her image, and to navigate complex personal relationships began to take its toll. In the period leading up to her death, her main romantic relationship was with Sam Brody, one of her lawyers. This relationship was widely reported to be tumultuous and controversial. Brody was known for having a difficult personality, and some accounts suggest he was controlling and possibly a negative influence. There were rumors of drinking problems and volatile arguments. Her film career in the mid-1960s was not as strong as it had been. She was often appearing in lower-budget films or touring in stage shows and nightclubs to make money. The relentless pace, coupled with her personal anxieties, the financial worries, the stress of multiple divorces, the custody battles for her children, created a backdrop of simmering tension and instability. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, and perhaps feeling the pressure of maintaining a persona that was becoming harder to sustain. She was juggling motherhood, a demanding career, and a complicated, likely stressful, personal life with Sam Brody. It was this cocktail of fame, financial pressure, personal turmoil, and a controversial relationship that set the stage for the journey she took in the early hours of June 29, 1967, a journey driven by necessity, tinged with exhaustion, and leading directly towards the shocking truth about her final, terrifying moments. And so, we arrive at the heart of the tragedy, the event that sealed Jayne Mansfield's legacy not just as a star, but as a cautionary tale and an unlikely catalyst for change. We are now going to confront the shocking truth about what happened in those final, horrific moments on a dark Louisiana highway. The date was June 29, 1967. Jayne Mansfield had just finished an engagement at a nightclub in Biloxi, Mississippi. Her next commitment was a television interview in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was a distance of about 80 miles. Tired, needing to get to the next location, she and her companions decided to drive through the night. Ronald B. Harrison, a 20-year-old from Mississippi City who worked as Gus Stevens' dinner club's driver, sat behind the wheel. Mansfield took the front seat next to Harrison along with her 40-year-old attorney and companion, Samuel S. Brody from Los Angeles. The Buick's back seat carried precious passengers, 3 of Mansfield's children from her marriage to Mickey Hargitay, 8-year-old Mickey Jr., 6-year-old Zoltan, 3-year-old Mariska Hargitay. 3 of Mansfield's cherished Chihuahuas also joined the group. 7 lives and 3 small dogs filled the vehicle as it headed west toward New Orleans on U.S. Highway 90. The journey took them along U.S. Highway 90, a 2-lane road that, at 2 a.m., would have been dark, quiet, and likely shrouded in the thick, humid air of the southern night. Accounts suggest there might have been a light fog or mist in some areas. As the Buick drove westbound, heading towards New Orleans, it approached a particular hazard, a large, slow-moving tractor-trailer truck. This wasn't just any truck. It was a truck owned by the city of New Orleans and was engaged in spraying mosquito insecticide along the highway. Crucially, this process created a dense, thick cloud of fog and mist immediately behind the truck. In the pitch black of the early morning, this cloud would have severely limited visibility for any vehicle following closely behind. It was a hazard that, tragically, the driver of the Buick, Ronnie Harrison, seemingly did not fully anticipate until it was too late. We can only reconstruct the final seconds based on the physical evidence and the accident report. Were they talking in the car? Were the children asleep in the back? Was the driver tired? The conditions were ripe for disaster, late hour, poor visibility due to the fogger, and a slow-moving obstacle ahead. As the Buick entered the cloud of insecticide mist, the driver's vision would have been almost instantaneously obliterated. Suddenly, the large, dark shape of the tractor-trailer would have loomed out of the mist, mere feet away. There would have been, perhaps, a split second of realization, a desperate attempt to brake or swerve. But at highway speed, in zero visibility, there was no time. The Buick Electra slammed directly into the rear of the tractor-trailer. But it wasn't just a simple rear-end collision. This was something far more devastating. The back of the truck sat high off the ground. The design of the Buick, like many cars of that era, meant that the front end would slide underneath the rear of the truck. This phenomenon is known as an underride collision. And in this specific, horrific instance, it had catastrophic consequences as the front of the car slid under the truck. The rigid, unforgiving frame and bed of the trailer acted like a giant, brutal shear. It collided directly with the upper part of the car's passenger compartment. Jayne Mansfield, Sam Brody, and Ronnie Harrison were seated in the front seat. The force of the impact, and the way the truck trailer sliced through the top of the car, meant they sustained unimaginable injuries. And here is where we address the persistent, gruesome myth, the rumor that Jayne Mansfield was decapitated in the crash. This is the detail that has haunted the story for decades, whispered as the ultimate horror of her death. But while the truth is horrific, it's also crucially important to understand exactly what happened. According to the official reports and eyewitness accounts from the scene, Jayne Mansfield was not completely decapitated. However, the injuries she sustained were so severe, so utterly devastating, that they looked like decapitation at first glance in the chaos and darkness of the scene. It caused massive, immediate, and unsurvivable head trauma to all 3 adults in the front. Their skulls were crushed and fragmented, and yes, the force of the impact was so extreme that it severed Jayne Mansfield's scalp and hair from her head. Imagine the scene: a dark, foggy highway, the mangled wreckage of a car embedded under a truck, and the horrifying sight of 3 people in the front seat, instantly killed by the sheer force of the impact slicing through the vehicle, the severance of the scalp, the severe head injuries, the blood and tissue. It created a scene so ghastly, so terrifying, that in the first moments of discovery, it was interpreted, perhaps understandably but inaccurately, as a full decapitation. The official cause of death for all 3 adults was listed as a crushed skull and brain. The specific, gruesome detail of the severed scalp is reported in accident accounts and biographies, confirming the horrific nature of her actual injury, which was in many ways just as shocking and violent as the myth, but factually distinct. But the horrors of that night did not end with the adults in the front. There was another layer to the shock, a detail that adds an almost impossible element of luck, or perhaps miracle, to the unspeakable tragedy. Jayne's 3 children, Mickey Jr., Zoltan, and little Mariska, were in the back seat. When first responders arrived at the scene, amidst the terrifying destruction of the front of the car, they made a stunning discovery. The rear passenger compartment, though damaged, had remained largely intact. And there, in the back seat, were the 3 children. They were alive. They were injured, cut, bruised, covered in broken glass, and, tragically, blood from their mother and the others in the front. Zoltan reportedly suffered a serious cut to his arm and required stitches, but they had survived the impossible crash. The brutal force that had killed the adults instantly, by sheer chance, had not reached them in the back seat with the same devastating effect. Imagine the trauma for those young children, waking up in that horrifying wreckage, seeing the carnage in front of them, being pulled from the vehicle by strangers in the dark. Their survival was a stunning, almost unbelievable detail that adds another layer of shocking reality to the event. The sheer violence of the crash, the instantaneous and gruesome deaths of the adults due to the underride, the clarification of the decapitation myth by revealing the true, equally horrific injuries, and the miraculous survival of the children in the same vehicle. These are the details that make Jayne Mansfield's death not just a tragic accident, but an event etched in the annals of Hollywood lore and highway safety history. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated horror playing out on a dark, lonely road. News of Jayne Mansfield's death spread rapidly and caused immense shock and grief, both in Hollywood and around the world. Tributes poured in for the vibrant, if sometimes controversial, star. Her sudden and violent end underscored the fragile nature of life, especially for someone who had lived so publicly and seemingly invincibly. The accident immediately triggered an investigation. The National Transportation Safety Board examined the circumstances. Their findings were clear. The primary cause was the underride collision with the rear of the slow-moving mosquito fogger truck, exacerbated by the limited visibility created by the insecticide mist. But the most significant and lasting legacy of this horrific event was a direct result of the type of crash that killed her. The fatal underride collision brought national attention to the extreme danger posed by the high rear ends of tractor-trailer trucks. Prior to this, there were no federal requirements for protective guards on the back of trucks. Jayne Mansfield's death, and the gruesome nature of the injuries caused by her car sliding underneath the trailer, was a major catalyst for change. In 1969, 2 years after her death, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration proposed new regulations. By the early 1970s, a federal requirement was in place mandating a protective barrier, often referred to colloquially as a Mansfield bar or underride guard, across the rear of all tractor-trailers operating in the United States. Therefore, in a profound and somber twist of fate, the tragic death of Jayne Mansfield on that foggy morning saved countless lives in the decades that followed. Her name, synonymous with glamour and excess in life, became inextricably linked with highway safety after her death. Jayne Mansfield was buried in Fairview Cemetery in Penn Argyl, Pennsylvania, near her childhood home. The image of the glamorous star brought down by such a brutal accident, and the subsequent safety regulations bearing her indirect legacy, cemented her place as one of Hollywood's most tragic and memorable figures. Jayne Mansfield lived a life that was, in many ways, a quintessential Hollywood story. The ambitious small-town girl chasing a dream, achieving dazzling heights of fame, grappling with the pressures of the spotlight, and ultimately facing personal struggles that mirrored the often harsh realities behind the glamour. Her image as a platinum blonde bombshell defined an era, placing her alongside icons like Marilyn Monroe and Brigitte Bardot. But her legacy is more complex than just a pinup girl. She was intelligent, driven, and worked tirelessly to build her brand. And then there is the undeniable, shocking truth of her end. The horrific reality of the crash, the gruesome nature of her actual injuries, and the miraculous survival of her children remain a chilling testament to the unpredictable hand of fate. But perhaps the most powerful part of her story is how her tragedy led to a tangible change that continues to save lives every single day. The Mansfield Bar stands as a silent, enduring monument to a star whose bright light was extinguished far too soon, in circumstances more terrifying than many ever knew. Jayne Mansfield's life was a vibrant, sometimes chaotic, flash across the Hollywood sky. Her death was a dark, shocking moment that revealed a brutal truth, and her legacy, intertwined with both glamour and tragedy, reminds us of the complex, often hidden, costs of fame, and the unexpected ways that even the most painful ends can lead to lasting, vital change. Her story remains, forever, a gripping chapter in the dramatic secrets of old Hollywood.